Hey, this is Frank. This vehicle is a 2002 Toyota Highlander with a 3.0-liter V6 1MZ-FE engine. You'll notice that I've taken the intake manifold and put it to the side. This is the first step in several jobs, including changing the valve cover gasket on the rear valve cover, or changing one of the coils on the rear bank, or accessing the knock sensors. In preparation for doing this repair, we've already removed some items from the engine bay in order to make it easier to access the knock sensors. The items we've removed already are this strut tower bar right here. We've also removed the cover of the air filter and the air filter. We've removed the engine cover, of course, and we've removed the hoses for the air intake. So let's get started. Removing the upper intake requires that we unfasten some bolts that are on the back side of the intake. Right behind the throttle body, we have a bolt. It's a 10mm hex bolt, M6, that holds this power steering hose in place, attached to the plenum. So we're going to remove it using this small ratchet with a 10mm socket. You have to be careful not to drop it. Here is the little bolt, and this pipe is now free on this side. The intake is also supported from the rear by a bracket, which is held on by hex bolts with 12mm head. We're going to use this ratchet wrench to unfasten it. Here is that bolt. So now we've unfastened the intake from its support bracket. Okay, so now that we've unfastened the lock nuts for these throttle cables, we need to get them off the throttle, and you do that just by turning them the appropriate direction and slipping the little end nut out of its hole. So now we have both throttle cables are off. Over on this side of the intake, we have a ground cable for the engine harness that is fastened to the back of the intake, again with a 10mm hex bolt. So we're going to use a little ratchet wrench to unfasten it. This ground point is very important. You have to remember to put it back when you need trouble. Otherwise, the engine won't run right without this ground point for the ECU and the sensors. So this Evap line should come off with maybe just a little bit of struggle there. There we go. Get it out of the way. Next, we are going to get this Evap solenoid assembly out of the way. It is held on by two 10mm nuts on a stud, one at each end. Take off the left one, then take off the right one. Get on it. There we go. To get on it first. Get it out. Try not to drop the nut. Of course, the nut wants to disappear somewhere. Okay, here is the little nut. Put it right here. And with these two nuts removed, this becomes almost free to move. We just unfasten one hose here. This is the hose that goes to the A6 actuator. And we have one more hose that goes to the underside of the intake. Take this one off. Now this just swings right out of the way. And we put this hose aside. So now we have the 4 attachment points for the manifold. There's one here, one here, one here, one here. The 2 on the end are 14mm nuts, and the 2 in the middle are hexes. We're going to start from the sides and crack open these 2 nuts. Use a ratchet wrench for the extension. 14mm socket. First one loose. That's both loose. And they can just come right up. Next we'll remove these 2 with a hex socket. So now our entire intake manifold should be completely free with nothing restraining it. There are 2 things left. One is this PCV hose right here, and we just loosen this, take it off of the valve cover. It's not a big deal. But the big deal is this bracket that is on the back of the plenum. This bracket is held on with a bolt with a 12mm head that is almost impossible to get to from any angle. It is right back here, and there is almost no way to get a tool in onto the bolt. So we have to be creative. So this is the bracket that goes up from the back of bank 1 and up to the plenum, and the bolt, the troublesome bolt, is up at the top of this black bracket. So we're going to remove the bottom bolt. Before this is completely free, there's one more thing, which is the attachment for this power steering hose and tube, which is that nut or that bolt right down there. So let's get that off. So with that final bolt removed, the plenum, the manifold, should be free to move. And wiggle it around a little to get it out. And now we can just flip it over to this side. So now you've seen all the steps for removing the intake, and thanks for watching.